let's talk about Italy. Let's talk about Argentina. And over the past few
Okay.
weeks, we've been seeing a number of world governments collapsing right before our eyes, right? We saw Sri Lanka. We've been covering Sri Lanka here on the
Yes.
show, right? You cut off fertilizer, you run up prices dramatically in Sri Lanka, and of course, their people then can't buy gasoline.
Yes.
Their way of life is destroyed. What other countries have collapsed in the past few weeks that we were trying to keep track of here?
Okay.
How
Let
about
me
Netherlands?
think. Well, I don't know about collapse, right? But have, um,
Runaway inflation.
well, most of the West
Mhm.
has runaway inflation. In fact, the UK is kind of just tracking everything what America does. 9% inflation, sure, we'll do that too.
Well, here, what
Same
about
with
Ecuador?
Canada. Uh,
Ecuador?
okay.
Ecuador. Oh, you saw Panama today. Panama also like on fire. That there's what about, yeah? You mentioned the United States, Canada, for crying out loud.
Yeah, it
Who's
does
next?
seem like these patterns are being replicated all across the West, right? High government spending, high levels of inflation, sanctions on things that your population is used to being able to access readily, such as certain foods and gasoline,
Hmm.
right? All of these things are creating this sort of pressure cooker of economic, plus coming off of a pandemic, right, where most people are still not recovered economically. And look what's happening. Politicians are being held accountable. I mean, it's really something when you think about. Now we've seen Boris Johnson be held accountable. I mean, the thing that he resigned over was scandal inside of his cabinet, but he has been asked to be accountable for his behavior during the pandemic, amongst other things, right? And that finally was the straw that broke the camel's back. Look at the Italian government now. The prime minister there has resigned and been voted out by a vote of confidence, for much the same reason, right? Inability to control the
Well, let's
economy.
go through this because this just happened. So I don't think
Okay.
people really know about this. Do you want to take this? So this just happened a short time ago. Let's put this up on the screen on my laptop here, Philip. This is Italy's this. So we had overnight this was the case, but now about 45 minutes ago we got confirmation that this has now happened. You want to?
Right. So, Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi had tendered his resignation last week, and the president decided not to accept it. So, he was held to this vote of confidence where he was indeed able to resign or forced to resign. So, what happened, right? Clearly, this was a natural disaster in the works. Now, most of us, when the pandemic,
A natural disaster?
no, it's not a natural, it's a man made disaster,
Right.
clearly.
No, because you said it was a natural disaster. I said like
Oh, it was a disaster.
well, I was going to say if you think about it, it's not like Mount Vesuvius exploding, right? It's not
Right.
like okay, hey, Mount Vesuvius just exploded like in Pompeii and like destroyed and killed people, right? No, that didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
It's not like that happened. Clearly, you would think, oh, this must be a natural disaster, right? Something out of our control, a tsunami. Mount Vesuvius explodes. That's why Italy's going. No, it's all man-made. You know, it was within the government's control, a man-made disaster, and look what happened.
Right. Well, Italy has been struggling with a dwindling population and a high level of debt inside of its government. And of course, we all know they had some of the earliest and most draconian lockdowns during COVID that lasted the longest, right? So any kind of progress that the economy could have grown in the last 2 years just simply was not.
Right.
And then now, I feel like there's this sentiment of many different many different ingredients to the pot.
Okay, so here are the Italian protests. So look at this. Talk about the ingredients. This is one of them. Protests erupting over rising fuel costs. These are taxi drivers that you're looking at here. They're pissed that the government has been going up against the transport sector, and the transport sector is basically trying to outsource this to other countries. Italians don't want other countries running their taxi service. Okay,
Yes.
well, like keep it in the United States. Keep it in Italy. Right, so they're setting off fireworks, set off firecrackers. In fact, they went to, and a bunch of them actually, then handcuffed themselves and bolted themselves to government buildings, government offices, and saying, "Here, look." They handcuffed themselves, chained themselves to the fences there. Italians don't want other countries, running their show. They also
Yes.
inflation, instability, draconian lockdowns. They have massive gas shortages right now. They can't get diesel. They can't get access to petrol. And if you think about it in 2008, right? So Italy in 2008 kind of dodged a bullet, right? while everyone else collapsed. It was
Yes.
bad, right? It was
Yes.
bad. 17% then in 2016 of all their loans were declared junk loans in 2016. Those junk loans were worth $400 billion, for 400 billion euros. They had to be bailed out by the EU. Again, governments printing money because the banks screw over the people. So they artificially print money and then basically hand it out. And no wonder they're collapsing. So now if you look at their debt, it's abysmal.
But if you look at what happened by the European Central Bank today, is that they made a move that was just like what the Federal Reserve has been doing, and they raised interest rates, right? And so that is going to affect all 27 nation states so differently, where an economy like Italy is teetering on the brink, and other economies throughout Europe are not hurting quite so bad. So is this just too little too late for a country like Italy, Greece, Spain, any of these other countries that are really hurting economically? Or will this actually make any difference?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, so the ECB, yes, the European Central Bank today announcing this rate increase, but I think the story that's being missed, a lot of it too, is the fact that in the United States and in Europe, is that they're also unloading all these bonds, these government
Yes.
bonds that they
Yeah.
had bought, right? They bought up all of this crap. So think about this for a second. Just wrap your heads around this, okay? This is not an economics show at all, but I want you to think about this. So the government has these artificially low interest rates. Okay, they lend money to banks incredibly cheaply, right? Then, in order to build up to bail out the countries because they're printing money, they buy up their government bonds, right? So that like pieces of their government they buy, the central banks buy them up, right? Artificially, and they buying it with fake money. How does that cycle work? Imagine if you lived your life like that.
Well, we're seeing how this cycle works. It really doesn't, right?
So I guess, you're right, because if you go to the grocery store now, you're using fake money to buy goods, and now your fake money, you need a lot more fake money to buy those goods,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So that's exactly what's happening. I look at Italy's debt right now, $3 trillion in national debt. This and all the way up through. Look at this. National debt from 2017 all the way up to 2027 is what it's projected to hit. Unbelievable.
Now, a lot of people said, well, look at what Europe is doing. When the United States was fighting over COVID release packages, the ECB had what felt like to us Americans, plenty of money out there. But now we see the European Central Bank saying, we're going to buy back some of those bonds that were even pandemic related, right?
Right.
And so this is a serious duplication of what's happening throughout Western governments that are built on these sort of fake cycles of money, artificially low interest rates, right? It's happening all over the world. And so to see another major politician be punished for this, I think is really big and interesting.
Well, it's really big and interesting, and it's also it's a huge drag on what this country is going to be able to do right now. So it almost puts the country in a stalemate now until elections are called for the fall. So now the people that were hurting are going to continue to hurt.
Yes.
So the Italian people are going to continue to hurt. And the $200 per month aid that they got was not enough. Mario Draghi said it was not enough. He didn't have support in the government to get more on this aid package. Right? So now the government dissolves. He doesn't have the support. It's dissolved. They'll call for a new election. They'll call for a new government. Again, this is the collapse. You're watching this in real time. We're going to give you more fake money to live on because you can't buy gas. And again, it all comes back to it's all man-made. Why are they paying more for gas? Why are they paying more for all of this stuff?
Why agree to this at all when, look at the example we have from Serbia right now, right? Which says, we're not going to get involved in this conflict. Our economy is fragile as it is. We're just going to do what's right for the Serbian people. We're going to buy the goods we need to from wherever we need to get them, right? And I heard from somebody on Twitter today, actually, that said someone who was in Italy, who said, we don't agree with hitching our wagon to Biden's war, and then we're harmed for it, right? We're hurting here, and we feel like we just don't need this right now. They don't have the bandwidth to take on something like this. So when their politicians fall in line with what other politicians are doing throughout Europe, say, okay, there's a war, we'll do that. We'll slap some sanctions. Got it, right? And then everybody's hurting. It doesn't make sense to normal people.
Now, to be fair, Italy has been experiencing massive droughts in the northern part of the country, 70% of the crops destroyed. So, but under normal circumstances, you would think that this could be manageable if you're a country that takes care of itself, right? It gets hot in the summers. There's droughts. It's a very dry country. If you've been to Italy, it's dry, right? And so they have droughts, and you should be able to manage that. But if you tell your farmers that you have to give up the fertilizer and you can't produce the crops, and then also on top of that, you can't get water and you can't get fuel because of an artificially man-made disaster by putting sanctions on Russia and also creating a climate crisis or declaring a national emergency climate crisis across these different countries, that's when you have these problems. So it's not just in Italy. We should also talk about Argentina. So Argentina is in the second country that we want to talk about that's on the verge of collapse or has collapsed. Again, you might ask yourself, okay, did one of Argentina's 36 volcanoes suddenly explode overnight? And that's what sent Argentina into collapse. The answer is no. Again, not a natural disaster, not a tsunami, not a hurricane, not a volcano going off. Again, the answer is no. The country's collapse is man-made. So what happened here?
Well, inflation is over 60%. There has been skyrocketing energy costs, and now farmers say that a diesel shortage is crushing their livelihood. So we see sort of a duplicate of what we've seen in, Canada, right? The Netherlands, where farmers are taking to the street and saying, look, you are creating a playing field that we cannot play on. We need these supplies in order to be able to produce our food and our livestock and support this country. These same farmers, again, taking a page out of the Canadian Truckers Handbook and leading massive protests.
Yeah, so look at this. This is the Argentinian farmers and saying, hey, we've had enough. Like, because it goes back to what you're seeing on your screen here. It goes back to 2019. This is what Biden tried to pull yesterday, declaring a climate emergency, right? Mm-hmm. He stopped short of just doing that because this is what it would have looked like. I mean,
Yeah.
you would have literally seen an absolute revolt in the United States. And if you don't already see it now, but you would have this would have been, it would set people over the edge. You've got a 30% approval rating and you're going to declare a climate emergency. So what is a climate emergency, right? You take away people's livelihoods. You crush their livelihoods. You take away their ability to produce food. You take away their ability to use fertilizer.
And you give yourself the ability to produce what it is you feel is more important than whatever it is you're taking away.
Right. So, okay, here in Argentina, you're not allowed to produce soybeans because you know what? From now on, we're going to get those soybeans from America. So all you soybean farmers, screw you. We've now decided, because we're globalists, this is part of the World Economic Forum, that Argentina will be designated as a place where we just get wine or, whatever. Right? Pick your crop. Beef. Pick your crop, right? This is what we're going to produce here in Argentina because the World Economic Forum decided that. So all you soybean farmers, you're screwed now. You don't get to do what have been producing for 200 years on this land because Klaus Schwab and globalists got together in Geneva and decided that this is what you're going to do from now on. Government took away their fertilizers. They can't grow food. So these save farmers, again, taking the page out of the Canadian Truckers Handbook, man, those guys really lit a fire. I mean,
they really should, put together a handbook, like
right.
How to stand up against the government and get international media coverage for something that is grassroots.
But in the end, of course, did it really work for Canada? I mean, they had their, the bank accounts stolen. What else, Philip? They had their bank accounts stolen. They had their
privacy tracked.
Yeah, the big one to me was that they were actually actively going after their bank accounts.
Bank accounts frozen.
That was
huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the end, did it actually pay, do well by them? I guess they didn't have to go get the jab for their
Well,
money.
that's the question now, right? So does Sri Lanka get a better government now that they've rose up and said what they don't want, right? Does Italy get a better government? Does England get a better government? Does Argentina is there an end result to this? That surely politicians around the world are saying, these actions have consequences and disenfranchised people are letting us know and it's costing our jobs. But to what end? This is my big question during COVID. Like, will we come out of this better? And I'm not sure if that's happened yet.
Well, look at countries that where we anybody who's watching us from Iceland right now, is anyone watching us from Iceland? Let us know in the chat. We're live right now. We are live. I would love to know. Is anyone listening from Reykjavik? Is anyone other parts of Iceland? Because here's a country that, after the 2008 collapse, put people in prison for what the corruption, right, and how they destroyed that country, right, and created a new government as a result of it, right, so that something like that would never happen again. So again, we have these little glimmers of hope here and there occasionally.
Yeah.
But I often feel like we end up going right back into the same corrupt politicians, again. So right now, Democrats are scrambling to figure out who they're going to put up against Donald Trump in 2024 in the United States, because surely it's not going to be Biden and certainly won't be Kamala Harris. Who will it be? What corrupt politician are they going to choose from? They're going to choose, Gavin Newsom? Like, this is all we choose from. This is all we pick from. And then the cycle repeats itself over and over and over again, unless we rise up and demand that these people are thrown out of office and we clean house. I mean, Donald Trump was supposed to go to Washington and clean and drain the swamp. He didn't.
I often think that, especially the United States, it's just too big to have a representative government represent this big of a landmass, right? But these smaller countries don't prove my point if they can't get it right for even a smaller population, right?
Yeah.
So the only pattern that I see here is that these governments are run by humans.
That's right.
And they all are starting wars that are costing their citizens.
Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.